Space is dangerous. It's full of strange phenomena and aliens that can cause harm to a Starfleet ship and its crew. Not all the time, in fact day-to-day life aboard a starship was fairly dull, and these encounters were often as wondrous as they were intimidating, but nonetheless, risk was part of the business. This was a lesson learned early in Starfleet's lifetime, and soon a series of ship-wide alerts were made standard procedure for vessels. Hi, Rick here, and this lore nugget of a video looks to explain these alerts' status. Back in 2152, Starfleet's first deep space exploratory vessel, the Enterprise NX-01, often encountered hazardous situations. It wasn't long before the Chief of Security and Tactical Armory Officer, Lieutenant Malcolm Reed, began testing drills to measure the crew's response time to potential dangers. Admittedly, he was a bit too engrossed in the concept at the time, as strange things were happening to the rest of the crew, but that's besides the point. The drill was eventually scaled back into a more manageable level and was termed the Tactical Alert, over other suggestions including a Reed Alert. On execution of a Tactical Alert, a ship-wide notification was sounded, which meant that all crew were to report to battle and emergency stations post-haste. This alert was more than a simple order to ready yourself for action, however, as it incorporated a number of ship functions that were triggered automatically. The hull plating of the NX-01 was polarised, and power supplied to the phase cannons and torpedo launchers. Security was also tightened around critical systems, which I imagine included the activation of computer firewalls. This was a Starship version of a fight-or-flight response, and this command was adopted into Starfleet operating procedures for every future Starfleet ship. Over time it evolved into a more layered series of alerts, as not every hazard that required an immediate response also needed a full conversion to a battle stance. This new alert system was colour-coded to indicate the level of emergency, so let's begin with the two most seen ones. Yellow Alert designated a ready stance for the ship as it channeled power into the defensive systems like the shields. This status by itself presented no overtly hostile actions, therefore no call to battle stations was given and the weapons system remained unchanged. This status was often called for when the crew encountered a potentially dangerous phenomena, or could be initiated when the senior staff suspected dubious or hostile intent from an alien vessel, but nothing had been confirmed. After all, it is not standard Starfleet procedure to open fire first. Usually, Yellow Alert was marked by a changing of the computer interface displays, called LCARs, to an amber hue. Crew members under a Yellow Alert were expected to perform their duties as normal, but be ready to drop everything and report to ready stations. Yellow Alert could also be issued by the Admiralty, to ships or even fleet-wide, in preparation for a perceived offensive. This system could be escalated easily to Red Alert, which was more akin to the older Tactical Alerts. This prepared the ship for combat, and non-essential systems were reduced to minimal power, such as lighting and holodecks, in order to free up available resources for critical systems. LCAR's displays were changed to a red hue, and the familiar alarm sounded to alert the crew, making it very hard to miss. In this state, the weapons systems were primed, and all personnel were to drop whatever they were doing and report to stations, securing the ship for possible combat. Escalating from a Yellow Alert to a Red Alert was a quicker transition than initiating an unexpected Red Alert, as the crew and ship systems were prepared beforehand. However, the situation dictated the overall readiness. It seems that part of a Red Alert status prepared the way for succinct damage and injury reports from all over the vessel, and engineering, security and medical teams were ready to respond to locations around the ship that needed it. There was also a double Red Alert that was used in the 23rd century. This seemed to indicate a higher urgency to report to stations, likely at double time. This was not used beyond this time, however, and if I had to speculate, I'd say that it was abandoned as it kind of psychologically lessened the urgency of a Red Alert. And it sounds a bit silly. Blue Alert was a seldom used alert status that forewarned the crew of hazardous situations, such as a planetary landing or source of separation. This was often reserved for irregular starship manoeuvres or operations that often required clarification on the part of the crew to report to the correct stations. The USS Defiant was expected to adopt Blue Alert on cloaking, or an Intrepid class attempting a planetary landing. Other examples included when a vessel was docking to a space frame structure like a shipyard or the Earth space dock. The Crossfield class of starship, a purely scientific vessel, was expected to undertake all sorts of strange and potentially dangerous experiments, and therefore was issued with a black alert to alert the crew that an experimental project was running and that it would have ship-wide effects. The USS Discovery used this in preparation for use of the Spore Hub drive. Some of these alerts are automated or tied to other systems, such as the self-destruct triggering a red alert, or the multi-vector assault mode triggering a blue alert, but all are at the discretion of the commanding officer and can be initiated or cancelled and have certain elements of the conditions altered or amended, but in essence are time savers in situations where time may be a critical factor. So there we have it, the use and function of Starfleet's colour-coded alert system and its origin. There are many more operating protocols that crews must respond to, but these are the big ones that we see the most. So, thanks for watching, and again, goodbye.